Welcome and get ready for a front row seat on Icons with Ava Johanna, the live show that is raising the bar in the entertainment space worldwide. You're about to be right in the middle of heart-pounding conversations and real-time connection that ignite transformation within. Our global live show stars the industry's powerhouses, visionaries, and cultural icons. Together, we'll walk the path of legendary entrepreneurs, influential business moguls, celebrities, and iconic brand architects. Join the conversation, seize the opportunity to engage directly with icons of their industries, and immerse yourself in an unparalleled learning experience. Icons isn't just a show. It's an opportunity to step into the minds and hearts of industry leaders and run with their advice. So grab your popcorn because this is the space where icons are born. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Icons. I am so excited to be here. We have a guest that I have been actually dying to have on since the very beginning of this show's creation. She's a leadership mentor. She is a ex-producer from Hollywood. She produced a Disney film at 27 years old. It's so cool. When I heard that, I was like, okay, I just need to meet her, because if she has now transitioned from Hollywood into coaching, consulting, and ultimately, in my opinion, paving a path for feminine leadership worldwide in big corporations, but also with probably a lot of mentors that you know and love, I just knew that this was going to be such a valuable conversation for all of us to have, because not only is Susannne brilliant in business, she has the biggest heart and is someone who really walks her walk and is integrity with a message of inclusivity and equability and being able to create a level playing field for everybody to have these opportunities that so many of us, so many people that are either watching this live or listening to this have every single day. The reality is, the world that we live in, like, we are so lucky for the very simple things that are so naturally a part of our everyday lived experience that sometimes we forget that so much of what we have is not available to every person across the globe, not available to every person in your city, in your state, in this country. And Susannne has done such an incredible job at not only illuminating that through a lens of compassion, empathy, and education, but building that into the ethos of how she supports her clients. And so, Susannne, thank you so much for joining us. It truly is, like, I don't think everybody understands how big of an honor it is for you to be here today. I'm so grateful.
You are so sweet, and I've just adored you ever since we met, and so I'm so glad we're having this opportunity to have a conversation. And that intro was like, wow, okay, she's cool.
You know what? I love when people riff about me in a way that's not my actual bio, but it's just their reflection, because it feels so representative of what doesn't need to be forced or said, but what is felt, and I think that that's a part of feminine leadership as well. What is felt, not just what is forced, not just what is expressed or what is shared or said by the person, but what is experienced by everybody around them. And so I'd love for you to actually just share, and I know that there's been many chapters, many seasons of your life, but the synopsis or the cliff notes for us, because I'm curious if this essence of feminine leadership has always been there, or if it's something that you've really learned along the way, having been in environments that don't typically have that style or that energy in the everyday interactions that are happening within an industry.
Such a great question. So it's a deep one. Let me just say, by way of quick summary, that I have a weird background. I was trained as a mechanical engineer, and I also got a degree in theater and film. And when I got out of school, my parents were just so adamant that I go find a job in engineering, and I was so not interested in going that route. I wanted to be working in the arts. And I have been creating and manifesting and doing what I call carrying a paintbrush my entire life. Every time I want to try something or do something, I literally grab my imaginary bucket of paint and a paintbrush and I paint a doorway, and then I make sure to paint the knob, and then I turn the knob and I open it, and I do what I call create opportunities for lucky things to happen. So there's been a part of my life that's been magical and full of manifestation for as long as I can remember. However, I also was driven by our masculine energy hustle culture matrix that we live in. And at one point, and I've done a lot of things since the beginning of my career. I've worked in the theater industry, the film industry in London. As you said, I produced my first Hollywood movie at Disney when I was 27 years old. I then got early into the dot-com world and helped build a ton of both startup companies and big Fortune 100s who were trying to become internet companies. I then got big in the social entrepreneurship world and sort of merging business and psychology and technology, and then ended up having been consulting and coaching the whole time, decided to focus my attention on that, because in 2012 I decided, after making a lot of men very wealthy through my consulting and coaching, especially in the tech world, I wanted to do the same with women. I wanted to help empower them. But I would say that the thing that really changed me is that when I was 27, I decided to start my wake up journey. I realized that I was heading down a path I didn't like. And I'm not talking about drugs and alcohol. I'm talking about behaviors and drama. I was living in Hollywood where everybody's full of drama all the time. It's like, she's the best, she's the worst, he's the most handsome, he's the ugliest. It's always these extremes. And I didn't want to become that person. So I started my wake up journey at that age. But when I was a little bit older than that, my grandpa was at the end of his life, and we were very, very close. And he said a couple of things to me on his deathbed that changed me forever. And one of the things that he said to me was, be dumber or you'll never meet a man. And at the time, I was super offended by what he said to me. But I realized in reflecting on it over the years that what he meant was, be more in your feminine energy. Give a man room to be a man. You don't have to be in control and certain of everything all the time. But if you lean back more, you'll have not only the ability to attract a man like you want into your life, but you'll be able to attract everything you want into your life. And he didn't mean it that way. He was 96 years old. He said it with this thick Czechoslovakian accent. And he just was, if you're done, stop being so, or you have to be dumber or you'll never meet a man. And all of a sudden, boom, for me, the lights went on.
Wow. I mean, I can fully resonate with that last piece around, really needing to lean back, not just for the sake of a relationship, but for the sake of greater peace and ease in your life. And it's so against everything that we see. And, I'm sure that you work with many clients at this point who struggle to fully let go of that control, because that control is safety. And I'm curious, when you really let that sit within you, of lean back a little bit, tap into your feminine energy, be dumber, so to speak. What was that process like for you at the beginning? Because I know for me, it was challenging. It felt like I was like, what do I do with my hands now? It went against everything that I knew. And I'm curious, for you, where did you start when you had years of conditioning telling you to lean in and to hold tighter and to be the one in charge?
So I want to dispel something if I can. When I'm in feminine energy, it doesn't mean that I'm not in charge. It just means that I'm not forcing anything. So when I lean back and I'm in my divine feminine power, it's just a different type of power. It's not that I've given it all up and I'm a helpless little soul and please come save me, some man somewhere. It's not like that at all. It's that I am still in my fierce feminine power. It's just that that power holds the yin energy, which is the mystery of the moon, the mystery of the dark night. It's the creation of space in between all of the stars that are in the sky. It's like that space is what defines things. But in our contemporary society, we're like, fill it up, don't leave any space. But we all know that creativity comes when we give it a moment. And so it's not that I stopped being in setting a direction in my life. It's that when I set the direction, I meandered with purpose, which is a line I learned from my friend Stephen Shapiro. Meandering with purpose changed a lot because I was
Mm.
not so directed and so blinded that I had to hit that goal. And that's the thing about masculine energy versus feminine energy is masculine energy is goal oriented. It's a binary thing. You either got it or you didn't. So when women come to me and they're like, I want to have $1 million year, and they have a $990,000 year, does that mean they missed their goal? Except for most of us, and when we're in our masculine energy, think that we did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
As opposed to setting a direction of where I want to go and then allowing all of the magic and mystery that's happening in the world to come forth. And the more we do that, the more we manifest because we're using a paintbrush, not a crowbar.
Mm. Can you speak a little bit to the difference in what that looks like? So, goal-oriented, masculine-driven energy would be the $1 million year versus like feminine energy. Is it still, oh, I desire to hit 7 figures in my business, but I'm open to being guided in how that looks? Like, can you share a little bit about what that might look like as a business owner to take a more feminine approach to the way that they're maybe playing with desire in business?
Yeah. So, what if it's not about a number? Because numbers are arbitrary. And the value that we've put on those numbers is completely arbitrary because having $1 million in 1920 was very different than having $1 million in 2024. And so it's an arbitrary thing that we're heading towards and we make it mean something.
Mm.
When you're in feminine energy, there's less definition of the meaning. But what if I desire to live a certain way? What if I desire to have a certain amount of freedom? What if I have a desire, a certain amount of flow in my days? I remember when I got to the point where my business was supporting me and I literally can now work. When I say work, I mean coach. So I'm actually working with clients and on things, on calls, on Zoom, no more than 2 days a week. And the other 3 days, it doesn't mean I don't work. It means I work if I feel like doing something that's promoting my business or making my business move forward. But there are other days that I might just decide to go sailing because I don't have to be there. And so it's this idea of creating the abundance in your lifestyle that we want, which is very different than saying, I want a number.
Yeah, I love the differentiation between that because I know for myself, when it was just number oriented, I was miserable. Because, like you said, it's like you either hit it or you don't. And if you don't, you make it mean something about you versus when, I started working with coaches and realized, oh, okay, like the number actually is just the surface level. The number is attached to a feeling of fulfillment or impact or being seen and validated and successful and loved. And if those are the things that I really am wanting, if those are the things that I really am wanting, there's other ways for me to experience that. So
Mm,
why don't I go experience that in other ways and enjoy the process of getting there? I can still get there, but that's not my only priority anymore. And someone in the chat says hustle culture literally hammers feminine energy out of us, which I feel like even going back to what you just shared, like working 2 days a week and then having the extra days, like if there's things that you want to do, business and work related, you do, but you also go sailing. Sometimes I find that even despite all of the work that I've done, it can be hard to connect to those other things outside of business when I don't have business things going on. And I think that a lot of that goes down to just like the cultural narratives around work and priorities. And especially in the coaching industry, it's like if you're not working, someone's going to work harder than you and be more successful than you. And these narratives are just exhausting.
Absolutely. And the thing I'll say is, my business, because I've been in this industry longer than coaching certifications existed, like me and Tony Robbins were at the beginning, right? Doing coaching. We're contemporaries. Now, I didn't know him then. I don't know him now, but it's this thought that this online version of coaching has a whole different set of parameters of success. So when I first went online, I was like, oh my God, I was 55 when I came online. And I was like, are you kidding me? I have to take a picture of myself all day, every day. But at the same time, I also had a lot of executive clients that had nothing to do with the online space. And so the coaching for them really ended up defining the coaching that I do with women today, because the issues are the same. And business is just the biggest personal growth game you'll ever play. So if you want to be successful in business, you've got to be successful in knowing yourself. And if in order to really know yourself, you got to do the deep digging into all of the coding, all of the things that we have had foisted on us and piled on us and stuck to us by other people, by society, by our family's norms, by the school we went to, by the people we grew up around, and that we believe that's who we are. But I often say, you're not as free as you think you are. Because even this outfit I'm wearing, or this outfit you're wearing, came to us because we saw something somewhere in some magazine or some store that this looked like a version of clothing that would make us both feel accepted. So I'm not even choosing my own clothes because enough in society is telling me what a woman who's 60 years old should look like. And I have chosen to get to know myself, and I don't look like most 60-year-olds. Right? And I know that because I'm choosing to step so far out of the matrix that I'm making choices for myself. But for years, I wore what I thought I was supposed to wear. I wore, and we all do because we don't realize how deep the coding goes. And so in order to really be successful in business, you've got to peel back so many layers of coding, so many layers of imprints. And you have to get to know what you actually want. So I'll say 99.9% of the women I work with, my first conversation with them is, so tell me who you want to be. I don't know. I've never asked myself that question before. Tell me what you'd like out of life. I don't know. I've never asked myself that question before. And it's because we actually don't really know who the real me, the real you is until we dig that deep. And when I say deep, I don't just mean the emotional work. I mean the deconstruction of, we today refer to it as patriarchy. I refer to it as the matrix. And even in the online coaching space, there's a matrix. There's certain mega coaches that have their own little world around them. And that's a matrix. You sign up for those rules in that person's world and these rules in this person's world. And it's just more matrix. So how do you actually free yourself? And then you can learn to be really successful in whatever you want to be successful at, because you're now defining what success means.
I love this conversation so much because I know we've all been there. There's been so many times where even if I have loved the coach that I've been working with, they've had a very bold personality and very bold rules. They've had their very strong structured matrix of this is how things go in my world and these are my beliefs. And you can't help but say to yourself in those moments when you're in front of somebody with so much conviction, oh my gosh, I should be doing it exactly like them because I see they're successful and they're really confident in how they're talking about it. And so if I'm not doing it like that, then I'm not going to be successful. And it's just not the truth because we have so many people that stand with such strong conviction that are telling completely different stories. And so I'm curious, how do we build that conviction within ourselves?
Well, I want to share a story because I think it's hilarious. So I decided to come online 5 years ago because I do these crazy projects where I try to save the world. So I end up like shutting down all my coaching and consulting work. And like the latest one I did is after the election in 2016, I crowdfunded $45,000, hired a film crew, and went to Alabama to really understand like what was going on between the urban and rural divide in our country and understand how people operated, particularly in the Bible Belt. So that's why I decided to come online. And because I'm a strategist and because I've been doing building businesses forever for other people, I knew that to build a business for myself, I needed to find a good mentor. So I literally like taste tested 10 different people. And I decided on the mentor that I was going to work with. And she was very luxury oriented, and I'm not. That's not who I am. I'm very much like, let's save the world. Let's figure out how to live sustainably. Like, I'm definitely not a luxury brand girl. But when I went to do my first photo shoot, because I realized I had no photographs of me at age 55 that looked fabulous. And I don't drink coffee, so I couldn't take a picture of my coffee mug with my journal next to it, right? This was all completely foreign to me. So I hired a photographer. I rented, this was during the pandemic, I rented a house in West Hollywood that, you could use for photo shoots. It was this stunningly beautiful house. And the first half of the day was me in ball gowns sipping Veuve Clicquot, because that's what I thought in this particular mega coach's world. That's what people were buying. They're buying into that visual. I look back at those pictures now and they're beautiful, but they have nothing to do with who I am. I had to literally extract myself from how people were being in that particular world to say, who am I and how am I different? And can I have a massively successful business teaching people how to wake the F up and teaching people how to find their deepest self and then how to step out of the world of what I call forced productivity. This idea that if we're not being productive, we're not a successful member of society. And it took a lot of work. And I was 55 at the time. And I say my age because, I'm a woman who's grown a lot in my life. I literally like to upgrade myself like software, like one does with their phone. You upgrade your OS. Well, I like to upgrade my brainware. And I'm currently at Susannne version 32.1. And I've been doing this since I was 27, upgrading myself, sometimes tiny dot releases, sometimes like a big release. And I had to do some deep inner work after this. I was like, Susannne, you don't even like champagne. What are you buying a bottle of Veuve for? And renting a house that looks like a gazillionaire lives there and taking pictures. It was not authentic. Mm. So we've got to find out what matters stuff. If you like luxury stuff, go for it. That's probably the right photo shoot for you. But it wasn't for me.
Mm-hmm. So in that process of finding out, because I I feel like it's multiple steps, right? It's like the awakening happens where you're like, oh wait, this isn't actually me. And I think that there's also, for anybody that's listening, there's value in trying on the ball gown and trying on the yoga pants and trying on the whatever it might be, because we learn through experimentation what we do and don't like. And so I'm curious because like that stage, that first step is the experimentation. Okay, this isn't something that is me. Okay, this is what is me. How do we go from this is what is me, this is what I value, these are my priorities, this is what I stand for, to I'm going to boldly stand for this and I am going to embody that energy that isn't necessarily I'm shouting from the rooftops and I'm the loudest person in the room, but I know who I am and I know the power of my beliefs and my gifts, that does take up that space that mega coach with their own matrix has. Does that
Hmm.
question make sense?
Yeah, I think so. You know, I believe in quiet confidence. And online, it's really hard to be the person with quiet confidence, right? Because you think you need to be loud to attract people. And it turns out there's lots of kinds of people in the world. And so when you define who you are, your people will find you. I can't tell you how many times people find me and they're like, oh, thank God. Someone who actually talks about, purpose and also profit. Someone who talks about doing good in the world and also having a good life. And so if you're so strongly defined in who you are, the right people will find you. So one of the first things I ever did when I started Dare Human, which is the name of my company, is I came up with what I believe is my model of change. What do I think it takes to change ourselves and change the world? And so it's based on 4 archetypes. They're called the alchemist, which is the one who knows herself. There's the artist, the one who lives on purpose, ignites their passion, comes up with creative and innovative solutions to things. That's the artist. The accelerator, who's the one who knows how to get shit done and make money, because you got to do it. I mean, unless we're trust fund babies. And then the advocate, the one who stands for something, the one who's able to stand up and say, I want to be this way, and I'm going to be the change I want to see in the world. That model, what I've found about it is that every time you become be the change, another level opens for you. And you're like, wait, I didn't see the world that way before. I have to go back to the beginning and get to know myself differently at this new level of awareness. And so you start again. And so the shape of our model of change kind of looks like a figure 8, because you know yourself, you live on purpose, you get shit done, you make money, you be the change, you know yourself deeper. And it's this constant flow of personal growth, personal improvement, and therefore a way of being in the world where you can stand confidently in your personal power, and the people who are meant to work with you, the people who are meant to learn from you, they will find you because your message is so clear of who you are.
Mm. I love models like this because I find it so helpful also for anybody who is in the thick of their journey with that magnifying glass, wondering what's next, or maybe feeling like something isn't sticking or like they're stuck. It's so helpful to have a framework where you can step back and say, ooh, you know what? I really am identifying right now with being the alchemist. Like when you were speaking, I was like, oh, I'm definitely in my accelerator era right now. To
Yeah.
to quote the Swifties, I'm in my accelerator era right now. So that means that it's time for me to step into my advocate era next. And
Mhm.
I find that so
Let me just put
beautiful
in
is
there your advocate era for this moment, because you're
for
going to
this
come
moment.
to another advocate era the next time you go through the cycle.
Yeah,
And that's what's beautiful about it. It's not like you get there and you're done.
right.
That would be masculine energy. Oh, I'm in my advocate era, I'm done. No, you're in your advocate era, which is going to teach you something that you now need to integrate at a different level. And that's what I think is beautiful. And I'm watching you do it,
Mm,
as you're growing and changing. And since we've known each other, it's just been beautiful. And so I apologize for interrupting you, but I think that's such an important part of this, is that it's an ongoing conversation with yourself.
yeah. I love that. And I'm so glad that you did interrupt me because what just brought up, and this is a selfish question that I'm asking, but I'm sure so many people will resonate. I'm getting in the chat that I'm reading people's minds with these questions that I'm asking. So this is perfect.
I love it.
Um, so being at this stage of the advocate, for myself personally, and this is my ego, so I will admit this. For myself personally, when I'm at that advocate stage, there is an air of like, I'm arrived, I'm here, there's a level of mastery. So then to go back into the alchemist of like, ooh, there's something actually that I wasn't looking at. And it feels almost like you're going from master to beginner, which is, I know, a part of life. And I know that I would be bored if I just figured it out at 31 and then never grew from there. Like, that's not part of what we're here to do as human beings, but it is really challenging. And I was actually having a conversation with Jennifer Donovan, who you referred me to, an incredible psychic and coach and intuitive. And last week she was like, "Are you putting yourself on a pedestal?" And it was such a breakthrough moment for me where I was like, wow, like I'm actually not allowing myself to be fully immersed in being a beginner at this season
Mm.
because I'm putting the pressure on myself to constantly be the master. And you work with so many powerful leaders and CEOs and executives who have to be the master of their domain. How do we support ourselves best and hold ourselves with empathy and just love during those times where we actually are required to become a beginner again, because everyone here is going to be a beginner again in their life.
So I want to challenge a premise. Just because my figure eight goes like this, there's nothing to say that being at the knowing yourself level is beginner. So imagine that you go through the cycle and you get to the advocate. Maybe your new beginning is the same level, and the next figure eight is upward, and the next figure eight is upward, right? So instead of thinking of it as I have to go back to the beginning, you're going to your new baseline. So for instance, when I teach emotional intelligence, when I teach people how to get rid of their ruminating thoughts, the ones that are keeping them awake at night and they can't fall asleep because they keep thinking about this thing over and over again, I teach a framework called the crystal framework. And there is the Y stands for Yahoo. What does that mean? The first two letters of the crystal framework are basically about noticing that you're in the pattern, which means you have to become the observer of yourself to notice that you're in the thought pattern. And then once you recognize it, I want you to yell the word Yahoo. Why? Because it's a pattern breaker, right? Yahoo! You're like, wait a sec, I'm in the office and I'm yelling Yahoo. Why are people looking at me stuff? Or here in your own, here I am in my own home yelling Yahoo. Why? It changes your frequency instantaneously. And then we establish that frequency as the new baseline. Now, where do we go? So if you're growing and you know yourself, live on purpose, get shit done, make money, be the change, that's your new baseline. Now you start again. Know yourself, live on purpose, get shit done, make money, be the change. That's your new baseline. Know yourself, see what I'm saying? It's like it's constantly moving upward. And so it's never starting over.
Thank you for saying that. That completely changes everything.
Yeah.
And I love that practice too, because it's so easy for me too to also like, I'll notice the pattern, but I'll only not notice it in my head. And then it's like, it doesn't create much of an energy change. It just actually creates more of a spiral of thoughts. I'm such a cerebral person that having those more visceral reactions to patterns that are becoming aware in my mind is so helpful. And I know for anybody that's like me that considers themselves someone to be stuck in their head constantly, that's going to be such a game changer. So I love this. I love the model. I love that practice. I think that even just changing your relationship to how you're looking at the unpacking of how we perceive the world or how we perceive ourselves is so helpful. I want to kind of change gears a little bit, but I think that you're going to love this conversation. So
Can
the
I
other
just
day,
can I just
oh yeah, go
add
ahead.
will you remember where you are? Because I have a
Yeah.
tiny little thing I want to add. So when we are learning to be a different version of ourselves, this is why I literally upgrade myself like software. One of the things that we don't talk a lot about in the world is that we know that 5% of our behavior is controlled by our conscious mind. And we know that 95% of our behavior is controlled by our unconscious mind, right? Our whole goal in the waking up process, in the becoming process, in the becoming the observer process, is to actually realize that you don't have to have 90% of it essentially under the water of the iceberg. So there is a thing that has been talked about in psychiatry from the very beginning and in consciousness, which is that we have a thing called the preconscious mind. So if I said to you, Ava, what's your phone number? You'd be like, blah, 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 blah. And if I said to you, Ava, what's your American Airlines frequent flyer number? You'd be like, gotta go look it up somewhere. You haven't stored that in your preconscious mind. But when we create frameworks for people, which is basically, I have hundreds of frameworks in my business because I can help a client install that in their preconscious mind. So say they're in this ruminating pattern, they know of the crystal framework. It's all the letters stand for something. So they can whip out that framework, take themselves through it in a microsecond, if you're used to using it, and boom, change their state. I have another one for emotions called the habit framework. The whole idea of our growing is that we're constantly installing like codes in the matrix, like when you plug in and Keanu Reeves says, I know Kung Fu, right? It's like you can plug in and tap into more and more intuition every single day because you're freeing yourself. You have frameworks to help you free yourself from your ego, from your mind.
This is so good. I appreciate you bringing that in because I think it supports what I was going to share anyways, or what I was going to ask you anyways. When somebody is in a less than ideal situation, let's say financially, or they're going through a challenging breakup, and they're in a position where, at the core, they're in fight or flight and they're trying to survive and not necessarily as cognitively open to what we're talking about, spiritual practices, these frameworks, because they're very much tunnel vision on, I have to put food on the table. I have to figure out how I'm going to pay my bills. How would someone in that situation work with these frameworks and with these tools in a way that isn't bypassing like the real needs that they have for safety and security in their life?
Mm-hmm. So I have so many things to say about this. Let me see if I can put them in line. The first thing is those realities are real at some level. But I often ask the question, is this actually a survival issue? Because we often confuse in our brains what is a survival thing versus what is a desired thing or a need thing, right? So the first thing I would say to people is get to know the brain, and I have an amazing program that teaches all about brain stuff that I'm actually giving away as part of the Vision Bundle. But it is about understanding that when our brains are under pressure, we actually start behaving like our prehistoric selves. There's all sorts of neurochemistry to explain it. But if you're under pressure, your lizard brain, your amygdala, is actually going to start driving all your behavior. Then you are 100% acting from your unconscious. 100%. So the first thing you've got to do is bring consciousness to it. Understand how your brain works. That under pressure, this is what your brain is going to do. And you got to ask yourself, is this a threat? Is it actually a bear that's going to chase you in the woods? Or is it a perceived threat? Because if we understand that it's a perceived threat, we can handle it from a much more stable place than if it's an actual threat, you got to run. Right? Then you want your lizard brain. You want your cerebral cortex to shut down, your higher order thinking, your language centers. All you want is blood in your limbs so you can run. That's what you want when it's an actual threat. When it's a perceived threat, we actually need to work through it in a very different way. And the best example of this that I can think of is, if any of you took swimming when you were kids and you had to pass all these swimming tests, part of it was like being fully clothed and jumping in the pool and having to figure out how to float until someone came to rescue you. But we know that most people, when they're drowning, fight the surface, right? But if they just stopped fighting and they laid back, they can actually float on the surface for a very, very long time, right? But you gotta relax to do that. You can't do it through the fight. So if, God forbid, I was thrown off of a boat right now in the middle of the ocean, I would try my hardest to relax and not let my limbic brain, my lizard brain, run all over the place with me, but instead try to be in that quieter space, calm my brain down, allow myself to relax so I can stay at the surface.
I love that analogy so much. I'm going to steal it from you because I talk about fight or flight all the time. And I think that that is the best analogy that I've heard around the importance of learning how to relax in those stressful situations. So this might be a little confronting for some people, or maybe even a little bit triggering. And I say this because I've been there, and I'm curious then, when we think about like getting our bills paid and getting enough money to, pay for our car payment or pay for putting food on the table. After you shared that, I'm kind of thinking that those are actually just perceived threats, and that if we go into fight or flight in those moments, we're doing ourselves a disservice because we're cutting off our connection to our logical, analytical, decision-making part of the brain that's actually going to support us in being able to figure out the way
Yeah, and you
to
also
make
cut
the
off all
money.
your manifestation channels. So imagine if you're at the surface of the water and you're doing this, you are not thinking and you are not manifesting, right? So you're right. The bills are a perceived threat because it's not going to stop you from breathing. It's not going to stop you from eating and having water or shelter, or it might, but that's probably pretty distant from the moment that your card bill is due. It's like it's due, but they're not going to do anything to you until it's in arrears for however many months. At the worst case scenario, maybe you lose your car. You're still not going to die. And so all of these are perceived threats unless you're in the woods and, a bear is coming after you, or something that's truly a threat to you. But we were built, and we still have a brain that acts like our prehistoric selves, which is awesome. I mean, it's crazy. Why do we produce so much cortisol when we're under stress? Because God forbid you're scrambling up a tree to get rid of a bear, get out of the way of a bear, and the bear runs up with his claw. It goes like this on your shin. Well, what cortisol does is it helps as a clotting agent, so we don't bleed to death while we're escaping the bear. We have all this chemistry in our body that is really there for a purpose if we didn't live in modern society. So we've got to learn to manage our brains. We've got to learn to honor how our brain works and not beat ourselves up, but then take a step outside, be the observer, understand, is this true? Is it what I say to my clients all the time, is it a fact or is it a feeling? Because if it's a feeling, we can change the feeling. If it's a fact, you actually have to do something about it.
What are your favorite ways to change the feeling? And maybe this is a little bit of a teaser into the emotional alchemy one, I assume.
Yeah. So I have a framework. It's called the habit framework, and I'm happy to take you through it if we have time. But it's 5 steps. The first one is honor how your brain works. And then basically I just told you guys, there's these 3 neurochemicals that are produced when we're under stress or pressure. They stop our brains from thinking. They make us make fast decisions, and they make everything, riskier decisions, and they make everything go quickly. So if we honor how our brain works, we understand what's going on behind everything. Oh, I just got, stopped by a police officer on the highway because they was going too fast. You know that panic feeling you get into right there? It's like, that is what your brain is doing. It's causing your limbic system to go crazy because you just had a perceived threat. Okay, so then after the H, honor how your brain works, you literally ask yourself the question, is it true? Now this is borrowed from the work of Byron Katie. She doesn't do it exactly this way, but I basically say, if you were in a court of law, you had to stand in front of the judge and jury and convince them that what you were experiencing is true. Could you do it? Like, my boyfriend's mad at me. Should you go into a court of law and prove that? If the answer is yes, you could, you got to go down a legal route, perhaps. But if you can't prove it in a court of law, you've got to deal with your emotions about, I feel like my boyfriend's mad at me, right? So once you know, ask if it's true. If it's true, go do something about it. If it's a feeling, meaning it's not true, then you can actually recognize that it's a feeling. So the B in the habit framework is become choiceful. So now that I know it's a feeling, I also know that my emotions are choice. So the B, become choiceful, is how do I decide what emotion I want to be having at this moment? Well, most people don't even realize that they can choose a different emotion at any time. So we got to teach them how to do that. So the I in habit is imagine a better thought. Maybe my boyfriend's not sleeping that well. Maybe there's something going on at work. Maybe something bad happened with his family and he hasn't had a chance to tell me yet. Imagine a better thought. And once I imagine that better thought, I realize this one thought I had, my boyfriend's mad at me, is not the only thought that I can have in this scenario. It's just the one I fixated on. So now I can pick a different thought. And now the T is trade the bad feeling for the good feeling. So if I felt like my boyfriend's mad at me, now I'm like, oh, you know what? He did say something that was busy at work and maybe he's just stressed about work stuff. Oh, I'm going to trade it. So my emotion now is I have so much empathy for him because I know what it's like to have a really challenging time at work. You know what? I wonder if I can cook him a nice dinner tonight. All of a sudden you're out of the mood and you've changed yourself and you have a different intentionality about everything. So I took 3 minutes or whatever to go through that framework, but when you know it well and it's installed in your preconscious mind, it becomes boom, and you can switch your emotions almost instantaneously.
Mm. My favorite part about that is that it's not bypassing the emotions. It's understanding that there's an entire spectrum that you could feel in any given moment. And sure, there is validity to the feeling, but it's not truth. It's not absolute truth. And at the end of the day, we get to be the creators of our lives and we get to decide, do I want to feel this way? How do I want to feel? Who do I want to be? And it's a framework for exactly that in those moments where maybe we forget or we fall out of alignment.
Yeah, it's interesting. I work with a lot of executive women, and their biggest challenge is balancing what we call the double bind. So the double bind for women is that in order to get where we wanted to get in the corporate world, we had to be tougher than guys. We had to wear the big shoulder pads to prove that we could take up more space at the conference table. We had to do all these things, right? But then the double bind is you get to a point where your individual contributorness has gotten you to here, but it's not getting you higher. And you start hearing things like, well, she's not nice enough, or she doesn't collaborate with people, or people don't like her. And women face this because they've not learned how to create the balance in their energetic self, their emotional self, and their cognitive self. They haven't figured out how to create what I call harmony. And that harmony is the thing that allows us to sometimes walk into the room and be the conductor of the orchestra, because that's our role. But there's some days that you go into a meeting or you go into a situation and your job literally is to be an audience member, or your job is to be a player in the orchestra, not the conductor. But so many women feel like the only way they can be successful in life is by conducting everything. We got to let go.
Yeah, so I want you to share a little bit more about Lead Like a Woman because I feel like this is the perfect intro into it. And so much of your work is in this feminine leadership and what that looks like in implementation. And so, can you share more about working with you, Lead Like a Woman, the work that you're doing with executives and inside of corporations to create this new standard
Yeah,
of feminine leadership?
thank you. Yeah, and I do work with entrepreneurs too, but not beginner entrepreneurs, because I've been doing this a long time. And so the strength of me is having someone who's farther along on their journey. Um, so Lead Like a Woman has been the culmination of 35 years of work and study and self-improvement. I did not start off as this person. When I was 24, I tried to kill myself. At 40, I went through a very difficult suicidal ideation period in my life. I'm a survivor of chronic PTSD. I've had a man in a room full of 19 other men say to me, it was a tech meeting at the beginning of the internet, and he said to me, "You are the stupidest effing person I've ever met in my life," in front of 19 other men. I have been through every up, every down. It's just been an unbelievable journey. And my one thing I wanted to do was heal myself. It's been the thing I knew I needed to do my whole life. I'm also a survivor of sexual abuse. Like, we all have the things that have been piled up on us. And I decided I wanted to create something that takes a woman through the entire waking up and freeing herself perspective. And at the end of the day, if you bring that into your work, whether you're an entrepreneur or an executive, you learn to lead like a woman. You learn to lead from collaboration and cooperation instead of competitiveness and individuality. So the program is so cool. It's 9 weeks long. It is a self-paced course because so many women don't have a ton of free time, though I teach them how to create that in the program. And it goes through an awakening journey. And every week there's an assigned movie, and then there's an assigned training, and then there's deepening work, and then there's written prompts. And so what I do is I highlight an issue in the world that I want to teach about in the movie, and then you watch the training. So it's like you can see how it starts to apply instantly. And we go through waking up, emotional intelligence, personal power, learning how to set amazing energetic boundaries. And once we understand all that, we add in the metaphysics piece. So what does it mean to live in the realm of possibility? What is quantum healing? What do we learn from science about quantum connectivity? And how can we apply that in our own lives in terms of our connection with source? I like to say we're all supercomputers with a direct connect to source, except for we've cut it off and we don't think we're supercomputers, but we are. This is the best computer you're going to ever get on the planet. This is the thing you have inside your skull. And so then once we've really locked all that stuff in, I introduce a whole framework about how to lead like a woman. And it includes just a bunch of different models about how to think about leadership differently. And I also go through a bunch of different world leaders to talk about, and industry leaders to talk about which of them are using feminine energetics in their leadership. For instance, the current CEO of Microsoft, who's an Indian guy, uses an enormous amount of feminine leadership in his leading style, which has changed Microsoft extraordinarily. And so we go through a whole process of what does that mean? And then it's supported with weekly live coaching sessions. So anybody who's in the program can come to these weekly live sessions and get one-on-one coaching in front of the whole group so that we're all learning from each other. And most importantly, women don't feel like what they're experiencing as the only one who's ever experienced it before.
So cool. And, the first thing that you shared around, always wanting to heal yourself, I feel like so many women entrepreneurs and executives feel that way as well too. But often we look at healing as inconvenient or something that we have to like take time away from life for. I mean, even if you think about when you have like a surgery or something like that, like you have to take time away to heal. And what it sounds like is that through Lead Like a Woman and the way in which you teach, healing can happen as you continue to be powerful. And it doesn't have to be this compartmentalized experience, but something that is a part of your life through these different frameworks and through the way that you approach your relationship to knowing yourself and then taking action and implementing and sharing it as well with your company.
Yeah. And I think it's really important that we realize that our own evolution, like the reason we're here is to evolve. And so as long as we have an open mind and as long as we listen to be changed, as opposed to listening to yeah but listening to yeah nope that doesn't we cut off so much before we have even an opportunity to listen to it. So the way I think about growth is, imagine a flowering plant. And so the information you get from a book, a coach, a podcast, a YouTube streaming thing, whatever, is the water that the speakers or the words are giving you. It's just water. And luckily for a plant, the plant is planted in soil. And so the water starts to trickle through the soil, right? So the information is the water. The transformation is the water saturating the soil. And then when the water hits the roots and it shoots up that energy up through the plant to produce the leaves and the flowers, that's integration. How do we take information that we hear from various places and how do we create an integration so it's so much a part of us now? Just like when you were a kid and you didn't know how to tie your shoes. And then one day you did. It was practice, it was becoming, it was learning, it was listening to the person who was teaching you how to tie your shoes, and then it was coming up with your own version of shoe tying. You integrated that, it's now part of you. So how do we take all of the inputs that we have, listen to the sources that help us be most ourselves, and then allow that to saturate us and allow it to help us rebloom?
I love this so much. Thank you so much for joining me today. This conversation has been just so nourishing to the soul. And I feel like it also just kind of like plants us back in what we can be focusing on that's going to make the biggest difference for our happiness and our fulfillment. And then the ripple effect that comes from us knowing ourselves, us standing firmly in our boundaries and our beliefs and in our values and our priorities and what we believe in and stand for. So I feel like I have a lot to walk away from this conversation with. And you did give a little bit of a sneak peek that for anybody that's here now or watching the replay, we have just started to talk about, but at the end of May, we have the Vision Board Life bundle coming out, and Susannne is a part of our incredible collaborative team of women who are coming together to offer their resources, their experience, and their knowledge. And Emotional Alchemy 1 is going to be a part of the Vision Board Life bundle. And I'm really excited for this personally, because I was sharing with you before we came on live, this whole last month for me has been a lot of emotional alchemy as I've been writing my book. And I just cannot wait to learn from you even more. And I know that anybody that gets the bundle at the end of the month is going to be so happy and so excited to dive in. But outside of the bundle, for anybody listening who has just fallen in love with you today, where can they find you? Where is Lead Like a Woman? We're going to link everything in the show notes, but just speak it for a second for all of us.
Thank you. Well, you can find me at Follow Susannne everywhere. FOLLOWSUSANNE. So you can find me there. You can write to me, you can DM me if you have questions, anything that's come up for you. My website is SuzanneGoldstein.com. There's a page for Lead Like a Woman there. There's also all of our online programs. So I've taught over 50 programs online. And there's my favorite 15 or so are up for sale that you can purchase. And it takes you, each program I do, it goes with one of the archetypes. So Emotional Alchemy is an alchemist program. True North, which is about finding your purpose and passion, that's an artist program. I have a program called I Love to Get Shit Done. That's an accelerator program. I have a program called Changemaker. That's an advocate program. So there's all of these different programs depending on what, as you said, era of your journey you're in. And thank you, Taylor. We love Taylor. And so those are the best ways. And Lead Like a Woman, I have to say, like, I wish I was at the point where I could give it away to every woman in the world for free, because it has been so life changing for the people who've gone through it. And I don't say that for me, because it's not about me. I say that because I was gifted with the message that is transforming how women are seeing the world and seeing themselves.
Hmm. You are so wonderful. Thank you for being here with us live. I appreciate you more than words could even express, but I hope that you feel my heart and my gratitude for you being here. Thank you, everybody that's been here live with us. I know that it's been a really beautiful and dynamic conversation. We host these calls every other week, live stream through YouTube. You can always sign up to be in the know of any upcoming calls. We email our list first and foremost, and you can sign up for the list at avajohanna.com/icons. You'll get a week out reminder/announcement of who's going to be joining us. We have incredible guests, just like Susannne, coming on. And I just feel so grateful that I get to share the YouTube and podcast stage with women like Susannne. So I hope y'all have an amazing week. What an incredible way for us to be starting our week. I feel so grateful. I'm like tapped into my heart. I am tuned in. I am turned on, as Abraham Hicks would say. And I hope that everyone has just received so much from this conversation. So we'll see y'all soon.